get YouTube set up and then I'll let the guys into the meeting. This is handy. I just put it straight onto YouTube. So then afterwards, I don't need to download anything. I just literally go make it public, send out the link, and the guys can watch it.
That's great.
There we go. Whenever it decides to load up. I'm just turn the sound off here so I'm not getting the feedback. Just yeah. Okay. Alrighty, we're getting everyone into the meeting. Hey guys, hope you're all doing well. Just getting a few more people into the session today. And then what I'm going to do is just going to run through a few bits and pieces, and then I'll hand over to Tom. So for everyone who is on week 2 of the 28-day total body transformation, week 2 is what I like to call Project Protein. So a lot of us, when we're trying to optimize our results, especially for body fat loss, we're not getting enough protein into our diet. So sometimes we're eating more carbohydrate rich food and we're feeling hungry. Whereas if we get more protein into our diet, we're not going to feel as hungry, especially if we're in a calorie deficit, which we looked at last week. The other thing about increasing your protein in your diet is obviously you guys are going to be training with us. You're going to be doing resistance training. You're going to be breaking down the muscle and then you want to build it back up. And protein is going to be a key building block for building it up. So for everybody who is on week 2, Project Protein is we're going to try and get you to get as close as possible to 40% of your diet from protein in week 2. Now, I know that's really high. That's at optimal levels for burning fat, building muscle during the 28-day challenge. Week 3, though, we're going to look at the average of week 2, and you're going to bring it back down. In some cases, you won't need to. If some people are hitting that 40%, that's fine. But we'll drop it back down. But we really want to get protein into the diet to fill you guys up so you're not starving if you're in a deficit and to build that nice lean muscle. Other little piece of housekeeping before I hand it over to Tom is most of the food diary reviews have been done by Saoirse from last week, but a couple of people still have their diary on private, so we can't review that, and a couple of people haven't actually sent through the form yet, so we don't know your name. We can't give you your review. There you go. That's the housekeeping stuff. But Tom, tell us about protein. You know,
protein. Yeah, Proteus. Yeah, Proteus from the most important one. You know, that was the macros. That's where the name came from, right? Mm-hmm. The origin of it, right? Because it's very important. I have got a few slides for you.
Yeah.
And Ronan is going to let me share the screen, and we can delve into protein. It's one of my favorite topics. I like talking about protein. Mm-hmm. Just like talking about food in general, but you know, I think protein is one of those things that comes up a lot. Okay.
There you go. You should be able to share now.
Super stuff. Okay. I'm sure you can see my screen. If you have any issue with sound or visuals, please let me know. Okay. Right. This isn't going to be a huge amount of information. Firstly, I suppose, when you say protein, you associate protein with meat. I think most of us do, you know, and there are a lot of different sources of protein, like, you know, in the very picture, broccoli, almonds, oats. People don't know there's protein in many different foods, you know, which is good news for us, really. So the first thing I want to talk about with protein is the thermic effect. So basically, I mean, this is going to help you, and I'll keep it fairly easy. When we intake food and calories, depending on the source, whether it's from fat or carbohydrate or protein, it takes a certain amount of energy to break that down and then to distribute it into the body, break it down sufficiently so we can absorb it and utilize it and turn it into energy, right? So this is called the thermic effect. Now, the good news about protein is that when we take in protein, it uses about 20 to 30% of its calories to be broken down. So that's really good news for us from a calorific standpoint. It nearly allows you to have a few more calories, but we're not going to get into that. Fat, for example, only takes 3%. So if I consume 100 calories of fat, only 3% of those, that's all it takes to assimilate it. Actually, if I do a fat biopsy on your body, I could even tell you what type of fats you've been eating, which is amazing. So it takes so fat essentially goes straight to the hips or straight to wherever you store it, with very little effort, and carbohydrate, 5 to 10% of the energy is used to break it down. So protein comes out on top there, so we're a fan of that. Okay, so let's just talk about protein sources. Obviously, I suppose the meat, fish, eggs would be normally associated, what we'd associate with this. Well, this is protein, right? But there's clearly there's protein in other foods as well. Dairy's high in protein. Vegetables, not many people are aware. I wonder, does anyone know any vegetables that don't have any protein in them? Well, there actually isn't any vegetable that doesn't have some form of protein in them, which is, again, incredible. People don't realize that at all. Legumes, nuts, and seeds have protein or high in protein as well. So if we have any vegans or vegetarians, or people who wish to increase their, I'm not a vegan or a vegetarian, but I like to increase my plant foods. If anyone's looking for protein from plant sources, I mean, as I said, the nuts, the seeds, even things like, I'll give you an example, a bowl of porridge. A bowl of porridge has about 7 to 8 grams of protein. Not something that you traditionally associate with protein. Beans and lentils and legumes are an excellent source of protein. They contain fiber as well. They contain a certain amount of carbohydrates, so they're a very complete food. Quinoa or quinoa, or whatever, however you want to pronounce it, contains protein. It is actually the only grain that has all the amino acids. It's a complete protein. Okay. The nut butters, yes, high in protein, but be mindful, very calorific dense, because I mean about 50% fat as well. So so there, I can actually send this list on to Ronan as well for you guys. Yeah, there's loads of really good quality vegetable sources of protein you can get. So what is protein? Protein is made up of something called amino acids, and amino acids are building blocks for life. I mean, there's so many uses of amino acids in our body. It's just incredible, right? So last count, I think there's 10 essential and 11 and 9, I think, essential and non-essential amino acids. So what does that mean, an essential amino acid and a non-essential amino acid? Well, a non-essential amino acid means that we can build it or create it in our own bodies. But an essential amino acid means that we cannot fabricate it, that we have to get it from an outside source, okay? So when I mentioned vegetables, all vegetables having protein, they all have certain amino acids, but not all of the vegetables are complete proteins. So in nutrition, we categorize proteins into complete or non-complete. So an egg is the kind of standard that has all essential and non-essential amino acids, and that is given a score of 1, meaning it's a complete source of protein, right? But ideally, we want protein from different sources as well, and not just one source. If we can get different proteins from different sources, it's probably even better. Generally speaking, I mean, people ask me this all the time. How much protein should I need? Now we're looking for a certain requirement here from our calories, and all of this will be based upon your particular activity level, your age, your weight, your goal. So it's different. If it's goal orientated, it's different. This is a general measure. If people are looking, people are looking for general measures, how much protein do we need? So for me, I'm about 80 kg, and for my activity, I'd be looking at maybe 1.5 grams per kilogram. So I'd be looking at about 120 calories a day, if that were, or 120 grams a day, if I'm just under normal circumstances and my macros are at normal levels. But you guys are slightly higher. You want to be hitting the 40%. So you could actually, you can easily work out what that is for you. If you have an overall number of calories, multiply it by 0.4, and that gives you the amount of calories you should be getting from your protein. But as I said, there is protein in every food. So a glass of orange juice, whatever your breakfast, even your grains, your veg, So don't think that, okay, well, I need to get 100 grams here, or I need to get 120 grams. Apart from what I eat, please be mindful of that, and you can check with Sorsha or myself around that.
I think that's one of the reasons we get everyone to use MyFitnessPal as well, to start tracking their calories, because you start to realize, hang on, this food has a bit more protein in there. you know, or this is a bit more
Hmm.
carbs, but you can still include the food you like. Like even like I
Yeah.
would substitute sometimes regular bread for sourdough bread because it's got a higher protein content, and I'd have it with my eggs as well.
Yeah.
So getting that. So always take a look at the calorie breakdown in MyFitnessPal as well of your foods.
Yeah. 100%. And like you know, if you're clever about this, you can, like, I'll give you another example. Say, like I mentioned earlier, like broccoli, a plant source, like that's high in protein. But if you eat 100 calories worth of broccoli versus 100 calories worth of peanut butter, there's a huge difference there, because you're going to get a big stack of broccoli. You can shove it, you know, you can, okay, you can eat you can, not as much as you want, but you can eat loads more rather than one,
Mhm.
you know, 1 tablespoon of peanut butter. But you can be clever in how you get your protein sources, like that. You know, like Ronan said, it is important for many different reasons. Like, you know, if you guys are working out, if you're in a calorific deficit, if you're looking, if you're training a lot, it's important from um, you know, to keep your immune system up, that you're not getting sick, you're not breaking down. Protein is responsible for a lot of tissue and muscle repair in the body, like Ronan said. So it's really crucial that you're getting sufficient quantities. And you'd see, like, you know, a lot of athletes. What research has indicated, that people who take whey protein supplements, it's actually more important for their immunity. Even it stops muscle breakdown, and it's really important for immunity. And I know some of, like, glutamine and some other amino acids and some other proteins are used by medical professions, by doctors, for convalescence, for people who are recovering from surgery, um, you know, for tissue repair, for people, even plastic surgery. They use protein, they use glutamine and things like that, because it really accelerates repair. And of course, enzymes, hormones, all of those things, you know, your amino acids, your proteins are crucial in that as well. So in terms of a hierarchy of importance for protein, your overall daily amount, that's the most important thing, that you try and hit those targets. So try and get 40% of your calories from protein. And, you know, Fitness Pal, Sourcia, or whatever, if you need to check how can you increase that, you know, check in with Sourcia and check those foods to take. The type of protein as well, and I suppose what comes with it, is that's another important thing, because I mentioned it earlier on. Okay, so we have protein, say, from red meat, which is excellent. It's a complete protein, but you're clearly intaking saturated fat as well with that, whereas other protein sources, they might be leaner. It depends on, you know, your digestive system as well. Some people find that the, you know, certain sources are cleaner than others. The nuts are, you know, they're high protein, but they're also high fat as well. So again, all of these things must be taken into account. And I'll delve into the types of protein in a second as well, to give you an idea around you know, the absorption rates and the uses, and sort of how to optimize that as well. Um, Leucine content. Leucine is a type of amino acid. So leucine content will essentially determine what Ronan said is kind of building. It's the kind of key thing in building and repairing of muscle. So your leucine content is important, that you get I think it's 2 grams per day, off the top of my head. Refractory period. What's that? So, I mean, if we want to build muscle and get lean, and you know, why don't we just keep plowing protein into ourselves? And will that work? Well, no, because you need a certain amount of time. So what you need to do is you need to take in the morning, say when we wake, the amino acids in our blood are very low, so we take in protein. One of the key advantages of having a high protein breakfast is it reduces cravings and hunger during the day. So it kills ghrelin levels. So ghrelin is the hunger hormone. Okay. So what ghrelin does is ghrelin tells you to eat. Ghrelin tells you you're hungry. If you're sleep deprived, ghrelin levels are going to elevate. So this is like a key thing for protein. So having a high protein breakfast in the morning is just critical. Um, then so your the amino acids in your blood will go up, and that will signal to the body to repair also. Likelihood is your blood sugar is going to be low as well after you wake up, so you will need a certain amount of carbohydrate, but well, most foods will have both, right? um, Then what you need is, a couple of hours, 2 or 3 or 4 hours where the amino acids drop down. The amino acid drops down. That's called your refractory period, or your rest period. And then, you need more protein. So you need essentially protein with every meal. That's the recommendation. Breakfast, lunch, snacks, dinner. Get your protein with every meal, and then what you're doing is you're providing the body with not only the energy but the building blocks necessary to repair. And then, of course, look, there are other factors involved, like sleep, exercise. Hugely important that you're hitting your exercise, because I mean, you can take in the macros and you can do this or that, but you're really not going to accelerate the metabolism, and encourage your body. You want to encourage your body to use fat. Like, fat burning is it's a response. It's a response to conditions. It's actually an adaptation. It's an adaptation by the body. You're in a calorific deficit, and your body adapts by using fat, by burning the fat that you have, through its daily energy expenditure.
I have a quick question for you, Tom. It's just one for myself as opposed to ones in the chat box. Now, guys, if you do have questions, pop them in the chat box for later. But there's a lot of people do a bit of intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
Like myself, I don't call it intermittent fasting. Just a lot of the time, I'm not hungry until later in the day. But I
Super.
found
Yeah.
when I don't eat in the morning time, if I'm consistent, like after 2 or 3 days, I'm just not hungry in the morning time.
Yeah.
Is that conditioning, or is that ghrelin levels? What's happening there?
It's both. It's both. It's both. I mean, like, near a lot of our drives are kind of driven by our neurotransmitters and our hormones and responses in the body. But, like, very quickly, like, see, don't forget. I mean, we would have been very well adapted to this. It's almost like, I go back to the circadian rhythm, the different functions that happen at the different times, and these external drivers and internal drivers that we have, but, like, the body is so adaptable. But that's absolutely fine. I'm a fan now. Intermittent fasting, like you said, it's a very broad term. So if timing our food, or eating at certain times, that that's what you're doing. And I would encourage that with people generally, because it's a good strategy for many different things. Okay, so quite quickly the ghrelin levels will drop down. You see, I suppose the most important driver there, Ronan, is that you're getting, when you do start eating, that you're getting sufficient energy, and you're getting sufficient vitamins and minerals in the block that you do eat. And once that's happening, then your body's not going to be screaming for food. So the ghrelin level will drop once the body realizes, okay, I'm not actually starving here. I'm actually in my day, I'm getting the correct amount. Because don't forget, as cavemen and women, we wouldn't have got up every morning and had breakfast. We would have been, there would have been days or weeks maybe we were scratching around, getting very little, or not eating till whatever. So, like, that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely normal as well.
There's a very interesting book called A History of Breakfast. I don't know if you've read that one beforehand.
No, The History of Breakfast. Wow.
It's to do with the Kellogg's brothers, and
yes.
also propaganda as well.
Yeah.
Like these campaigns. So if you haven't read this one, I'll give you a short synopsis. The Kellogg's brothers, one was very religious, and the other didn't care at all.
That's right. Yeah.
One of the brothers believed that if people had high calorie foods, they're more likely to fornicate and or masturbate, and he was not a fan of this. So he produced a low calorie cereal for his workers that was cornflakes.
Yeah.
And this is what he would feed his workers on the farm. His brother, however, realized that these things tasted pretty good with a bit of milk, and he started to market them. Later on, Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Freud, he was a big marketer, the founder of modern name PR. The pork industries came to him and said, we want to sell more pork. And he said, well, look, you're not selling any pork at breakfast time. So he sent out this campaign to doctors across America and got responses back. And he sent out the campaign saying, do you think it's better to eat a hearty breakfast or a sparse breakfast? And it was something like 99 out of 100 doctors replied saying a hearty breakfast. So he put this in a campaign to say 99 out of 100 doctors all across America recommend a hearty breakfast, eat bacon. The poultry guys said stick eggs on there, and that's where bacon and eggs came from for breakfast. And then the Kellogg's brothers almost started the whole breakfast thing.
I actually read the history of the Kellogg's brothers, because I was in Kellogg's this year to do a few talks for them. And I thought, well, I better, if I go into a company, I look him up. And for me, it's very interesting because I know if you've seen the film, there was a really, because he started a health farm, right?
Mm.
One of the brothers, and he done all kinds of crazy things. Like, he was a physician, but he done all kinds of crazy. But I think, like you said, I think what happened was he went away on holiday, and the other brother added a ton of sugar into the
Yeah, yeah,
into the cornflakes, and everyone loved them, and it was like,
and started
but
flogging them.
and
Yeah,
then they fought then, I think, but one of them got the franchise or one of them got the name, but it's all built on that, which is amazing, right?
yeah,
But I
yeah.
mean, you hear all kinds of things with this, don't you? With breakfast, with this, with lunch, you hear all kinds of strategies, and this is best and that's best and everything.
But I think to
I
your
think,
point, like if we look at ourselves as humans, we didn't have that much food when we were that hunter-gatherer cavemen. It
yeah.
was gorging during the summer, high calorific food. So, that's why we like
Mhm.
that. And then it was, sparse a lot of the times. But now we just have these high calorie foods on tap the whole time. And it's some studies
I
suggest we're
think it's
hardwired to eat
that's
them. Mm.
yeah, I think it's important for people to understand that we're driven by primarily instantaneous reward. So we serotonin and cortisol in our brain, and we're set up for instant reward, right? We're set up.
Mhm.
So what is that? Like sugar, salt, and fat. If you consume sugar, salt, and fat, like in nature, as cavemen and women, those things were very rare. So if you got them, your brain had to tell you very quickly, this is good for you. It will keep you alive. And you get a blast of serotonin, the mood enhancer. You, oh my God, that was lovely, right? So that short-term reward is what we've been hardwired for survival. But the only
Mhm.
problem is now it's bloody everywhere and
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
killing us, right?
yeah.
So the long-term stuff like the exercise and the leafy greens, you get massive long-term health rewards,
Hmm.
but not the instant ones, and it takes time for all that to adapt, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so protein supplement. I just want to touch on this briefly because some people, you will go for your supplements and that's fine. Protein supplements have different absorption rates. So, um, I've even worked with some of these companies. The way that you'd see a lot whey protein, that actually it's within 20 minutes. This graph says 2 hour peak. I suppose, yeah, the peak amino acid blood concentration is at 2 hours. But guys who go to the gym or girls who go to the gym or anyone who uses whey protein, it absorbs very quickly. And that's the difference between eating a chicken breast and having a protein shake, right? Um, so one of the things that, like, the main outcome of having whey protein is not building a large amount of muscle. It's actually stopping protein breakdown in the body. Because if you've done especially high intensity or weights right now, if you do that kind of high intensity stuff, you get micro tears in the body, and your muscles start essentially breaking themselves down, and you have to stop that to maintain muscle. So whey protein does that, but it won't do that unless unless you have something called insulin growth factor 1 in your bloodstream, which means that you have to have carbohydrate with the protein. Okay, you have to have carbohydrate because if you just have the protein, it will take longer to stop the muscle breakdown. Other protein sources are much slower at absorbing, and that can be beneficial as well. So things like the far end casein. So casein is a byproduct of most of this is byproduct of the cheese making industry, but casein is found in milk, and we have casomorphin receptors in our brain. It's essentially found in breast milk, right? Casein is essential, or it's very good for growth because it takes a long time to get absorbed. So if you have a casein shake or a casein, foods like cottage cheese are very high in casein. So if you have that and then you fall asleep, you're going to optimize tissue repair, because when you're asleep, growth hormone is secreted. When? Well, it's secreted during the first two deep phases of sleep. So you have growth hormone and protein together, then you're going to accelerate repair in the body. So that might be something to think about, maybe, that your last food of the day might have some cottage cheese or might have something with casein in it to help with the repair. So start and finish with protein. Here's my advice. Start and finish with protein. Choose a range of different sources of protein. Try new vegetable sources of protein. You're going to be able to eat a lot more with a lot less calories. Calculate one day's worth. Like go into MyFitnessPal, put every single thing in, get an idea, get a good idea yourself that you're hitting your protein, you're hitting your 40% protein in a day. You know, I mean, keep track. Keeping track is kind of crucial, but you should know, you should get a handle on it pretty quickly. And then don't forget what's coming with your protein, because, you know, be mindful of the protein bars in the shop. Pick them up, look at the sugar content. Okay, are you having a load of sugar with your protein? Are you having a load of calories or a load of fat with your protein as well? So just be mindful of that, and don't be afraid to use supplements if you want to use supplements on your protein.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I think that's one of definitely the hacks I have in terms of the supplements. So there's a really good low calorie one that I use. So 2 spoons of low fat Greek yogurt. This normally I'd have standard Greek yogurt, but if you want to do low calories, a spoon of whey and a couple of frozen blueberries. Mix that stuff up
Lovely.
together. Tastes like ice cream. It's about 150, 160 calories. Super easy to eat, and it'll
There
help
we
you get
go.
into those protein goals. So Andrea has a question here. So can I get a snack before bed? A small smoothie with casein. Yeah, well, I suppose with the smoothie part, I'll hand this over to you in a second, Tom. But with the smoothie part, Andrew, just make sure what's going into the smoothie. Like, we don't know. Is it going to be a banana? Is it going to be some milk and yogurt? Is it going to be? You just got to make sure your calories are all right. But your thoughts on? I have mine, but I'll hand over to you. Snacks before bed. People always worry about eating late. What'll happen?
Yeah. You see, I mean, it comes back to your hierarchy of importance. Is that food going to push you over the edge of your calorific intake? If it is, then you're going to lose the benefit of taking it, right? So that's the first thing. Is it going to push you over the edge? It should not be just before bed as well. It should be 2 to 3 hours. Okay, 2 to 3 hours. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing, just like Ronan said, is like, what's going into the smoothie? Because like we have this thing in our head of smoothies are good for me, and people load up 500 or 600 calories of sugar and throw them into it and gulp it down and think they're doing themselves great. So what's going into the smoothie? So keep number one, get the calories right. Number two, get the content right as well. So, but I mean, like, look, if you're looking to really, I suppose, bootstrap onto your hormonal responses, then it can be a good thing if it's executed correctly and if you're within your calorific and your energy requirement for the day.
Yeah, absolutely. That, like, the thing is, don't worry about, like, if you do end up eating late at night, as often tends to happen on a Friday or Saturday, it's not going to mess you up completely if you're in your calorie range, as Tom said. So you don't have to be strict. I'm not eating anything 2 to 3 4 hours before bed. It's obviously better for you, but like, you don't have to do it all of the time. So some people get worried about that. What else have we got in here? Okay, so this a smoothie with spinach, spoon of berries, and in a case, and that sounds pretty good. We'll allow that one.
100%. That
Alison,
sounds
so
good.
the best protein powder to take is whey isolate. Which brands are best?
Right. Like I've actually paid for research on protein powders. You can pay for research. You have to pay for it, right? Because they don't want you knowing. Because sometimes these independent companies will come along and they will grab protein powders, all different brands, and they will test them for purity. And I paid a couple of years ago for a report on all these kind of different brands, and the brands that came out at 80 to 90% purity were at the very top end. And those were brands like Optimum Nutrition, that's the gold standard whey protein, and they do casein as well, right? So those guys are the only company, Irish company. It's the best-selling protein in the world. It's the number one best-selling protein, and it's made in Ireland. It's made in our doorstep. It's the only protein company or supplement company where they can trace the powder that you're having to the herd of cows the milk came from. So that's how good it is, and they certify it and everything else, right? So Optimum Nutrition. I probably recommend other Irish brands as well, like Kinetica. I'm not a brand ambassador for any of these guys or anything like that, but like, I'm telling you now, pay for it, because if you go and you get cheap alternatives online, those things came in at 10 to 20% purity. They were full of maltodextrin, which is a type of cheap carbohydrate filler. So you're having this cheap protein powder and you're wondering why it's not working for you. So get the good stuff. And actually, I'll tell you what I'll do. I will just, I suppose, for the people who tuned in today, I've got some Optimum Nutrition casein protein, and I'll give you a tub that you can raffle off. I let you come up with that, Ronan. You can come up with that, right? But I'll send out a free tub of casein protein to whoever.
Yeah, I might win it. Who knows? So I find the My Protein stuff from the UK is actually okay. I use that their way. I don't know if you've done testing on that one there. Like I use that and I get results. Like I know my muscle mass is down now because I'm not eating as much protein as I was during the last challenge. Does the trick for me. Did you get any testing done on that one before?
No, I didn't see My Protein on it. If I can remember, I've seen a lot of there was a lot of US brands, and there was one or two cheap European kind of brands, but I didn't see My Protein on it.
Yeah,
I suppose they would have
enough.
good buying power, you know.
Yeah. So there's one here. How does pulse and whey protein isolate rate? There you go.
How does it rate? Yeah, excuse me. Isolate is slightly more expensive, so it's like pre-digested, so it makes it easier for you to digest. So yeah, I'm a fan of that as well. So yeah, no problem with that. They take out some of the lactose and the sugars. So the isolate I am a fan of as well. It's more expensive. But yeah, excellent.
So one of the things I've seen happen when we're doing the challenges before is people just get a little bit too hung up on getting things absolutely perfect or absolutely right, and they get super stressed. They're not thinking they're not having enough of this. Remember, guys, it's 4 weeks here, but like you've got the rest of your lives ahead of you if you're doing the challenge for the first time. So you only need to try and get close to the goals that we set you, like the 40%, or try and use, like if you've got some cheaper protein and it's okay, it's working now, but then next time around, get a better quality one. So it's like little baby steps, bit by bit.
100%.
And eventually you're not even going to have to calculate your calories anymore because you're going to know what's in your food, you know? So one of the things I like to stress is don't stress. Okay.
Yeah.
That's very, very important.
Yeah, and I think people do forget that as well, Ronan, that like, you know, there's protein in orange juice, there's protein in lettuce, there's protein in, and no, don't be harsh. All you're doing is actually, you're like, the level you're competing against yourself, and you're competing against sort of last week's version of yourself, that you try and improve on that. And that's, you know, we'd all like to get perfection, but look, it ain't going to happen for people who are in the business themselves, or people who have whatever, they've spent years failing and trying and failing and trying. So like, don't be hard on yourself. Just keep trying. That's the important thing. You keep trying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most of us, when we join the challenge, we do this for aesthetic reasons. Like we say, it's for health reasons, but the reality, it's for aesthetics. We want to look good naked, you know, and you can be honest with yourself about that. So you don't need to be trying to get your food like you're an athlete about to step out on the field to play or something like that. Gradual steps will make it better. Lisa was wondering if you know any good cookbooks for high protein dishes for the veggies in the group.
All right. Okay. Oh, I see. My wife is the chef. What I might do is throw you over a few
suggestions,
recommendations from her. She's actually. I was just looking at one of her books today, and it's vegetarian. She's downstairs doing a cookery demo as we speak, so I better not disturb her. But what I'll do is I'll throw over a few titles, because there are some very good vegetarian and vegan chefs out there who are doing some amazing things with food. Like she serves me up food. She goes, "How is that?" And I go, "That was amazing." And she goes, "That was vegetarian." I'm like going, "Oh yeah, it was," but I didn't notice it was. And it was high in protein, and it was really tasty. Like, because I'm not a fan of tofu or whatever. Tempeh I prefer, but like, I wouldn't be a fan of that. Like, but you know, I'll throw up some recommendations for you guys.
Absolutely, and we'll drop them in the group later. One of the things I like to tell people to do with protein is test out the different types of protein within your diet. So like my body doesn't react well to red meat anymore unless it's high quality steak, but it used to a couple of years ago. So I noticed like my body changes and my gut health changes and stuff like that. So poultry, white fish, all those sort of sources of protein, whey protein, dairy work better for me. So just kind of like look how you're feeling afterwards, and you'll start to adapt and know what works for you. And also look back on your MyFitnessPal, what you've actually eaten, how you felt afterwards, because you'll find there's certain food groups that work really well for you, like beans and legumes. You do not want to be around me when I eat them.
Well, that's a good point, because let me tell you something. See, and you know, you said it there. Your gut bacteria is evolving and changing, right? Now, the reason why we get gassy with beans is we haven't built up sufficient bacteria to break them down, so they start to slightly ferment in the gut, and that causes the gas, right? So the approach is start small, and when you find that you can, you know, once or twice a week have your beans, that you can tolerate them, and that you're not getting gassy anymore, because it's not. We have to understand the messages our body are sending us, right? And then you can increase and increase and increase, because, like, traditionally speaking, from an Irish background, beans are, you know, Heinz beans, baked beans. That was the only beans we had growing up, right? Or I certainly had anyway. We didn't have any of these fancy Adzuki beans or any of that, or pinto beans, right? But it takes time to build up your gut bacteria. Then you have the bacteria to sufficiently properly break down the beans without the negative gassy impact. So, but do listen to your body, because, like, sometimes like dairy, for me, I will get bloated and gassy, and there's a different reason I'm getting gassy and bloated. You know, I don't have a tolerance for lactose. You know, so, and listen to your body, be careful.
So this is actually a really good question. We sort of touched on earlier on. So should we only have egg whites for protein, or the full egg is fine?
Okay, here comes the egg conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's keep it simple here, right? So we're on a 28-day program here, so we're looking at like function here, right? So the that's where all the amino acids are. It's in the white of the protein. That's where all your essential and non-essential amino acids are, right? Your fat, the fat is coming from the yolk and the vitamin A. That's where all the fat comes from, the yolk. So you can get rid of that, and that will really help from a calorific point of view, and you're still getting loads of protein with the egg whites, right? So yes, and I can see someone else wrote how many eggs per day, or how many eggs. So the egg white is fine for the protein, right? And how many eggs per week? Well, you know, again, I mean, this is kind of personal to one extent. So what you have to be very mindful of is that if you're having whole eggs, then your cholesterol level, right? So this, like, here we see the distinctive difference between a goal-orientated outcome or a health-orientated outcome. So if I'm talking from a health perspective, I'm talking about really reducing egg intake. If I'm talking from, and you'll hear loads of contradictory evidence. You'll hear absolutely tons of contradictory evidence about this. But we're on a short-term program here, focused on a body composition outcome, and it's short-term as well. It's, you know, it's 4 weeks concentrated, so I'm not going to delve in. I'm not going to sort of take any heed of that. So what we're going to go for is, you know, in the short term, I wouldn't worry too much about it. I wouldn't put a number on it. If I'm putting a number on it from a health perspective, it would be different, because it's not just that. If I look at the negative outcomes in the body from consuming too many eggs, it's not that those negative outcomes aren't just coming from the yolk, they're coming from the white also. So they produce TMAO, trimethylene oxide, in our body, which can be inflammatory, which we don't want. So, but what I'm saying to you is, short-term 28-day program, don't mind the eggs for the short-term period, but
yeah, what you'll see a lot of people are looking for body composition goals, especially in the female side of things, is they want to have the full egg, so they're getting a complete protein, but they're adding egg whites in. So they might have 1 to 2 eggs, and then they'll buy the egg whites in cartons and add that in. So they're increasing their protein levels without massively increasing their calorie levels. And I know that's worked really well for.
It works. It does. It works really well like that. Yeah, 100%.
One of the things I do, this is a friend of mine is a chef, and he makes this stuff called turmeric gourmet, which is turmeric paste mixed with, you know, olive oil, black pepper, everything that brings out the anti-inflammatory side of things. I'll have breakfast 2 eggs with a tablespoon of this turmeric gourmet stuff, and it's really good for the balance in terms of the anti-inflammatory. But don't need to be scared of eggs.
Don't be afraid of eggs.
They're delicious as well. So, cool. Now we've got time for just 1 or 2 more questions here. So let's, Alison, should you weigh your meat food before cooking, or if you used full pack of chicken breasts, say, can you estimate the weight of each?
I think now, source, correct me if I'm wrong here, right? I think there's about 25 to 30 grams of protein in chicken breast. I think there's about 10 grams of protein in an egg. You guesstimate it. I wouldn't be. I mean, look, if you're really that type of person, if you're really that type, I need to know, and that's it. I don't want estimations. I want exact. You can do that. You can weigh it and whatever. Go on MyFitnessPal, put in a 1 medium chicken breast, and it will tell you how many grams of protein are in a medium chicken breast. So you can do it that way. But for me, I'm not like that. I know this is about 90 calories in a medium banana. I know this is about 20, I think about 20 grams of protein in a chicken breast, in a medium chicken breast. So I kind of go along that way. I guesstimate it.
Yeah, I like the first time I did a challenge or whatever, for myself personally years ago, I would have weighed the food just to get an idea. But
Yeah.
like, you just get to the point where you don't need to. If you want to buy a little digital scales, fire ahead. But MyFitnessPal has most of the stuff in there, so just scan the pack or put in what they have, and it'll be pretty accurate. As long as you're in your calorie deficit for dropping fat, you should be fine. If you notice you're going over what you're supposed to be, or your weight's not going down, you obviously have a chat to us about that. But if you're in your deficit, I would just be using MyFitnessPal rather than weighing stuff. Like, you just shoot yourself in the face if you had to do that for every single meal every day. So you can if you want, but MyFitnessPal will have most of the stuff in there. Good stuff. Any other questions, guys? Now, you'll see what happens next week. There'll be so many protein questions because people will be trying to get their protein in and all that sort of stuff. So it'll come up. But I think what I'd love to cover next week is some of the sleep stuff as well, because obviously nutrition is super important. Sleep is key, and then exercise. We got you covered on the exercise side of things. But if we have a look at the sleep side of things and answer the protein questions next week, we'll do our Jerry Springer moments. Final thoughts for us today, Tom?
Look, protein is one of those things that it can really be your friend, and it will kill appetite. There's nothing better at just killing appetite. So, for that alone, as I said, start the day right. Like, most of us are pretty good at starting the day right. It's the evening time that we're not great at, right? So start the day with protein with every meal. At the end of the day, because we should actually naturally be going anyway from carbohydrates to protein, because we need less energy as the day goes on. So finish with protein. Don't worry too much about exact quantities, and just, if in doubt, pile it into you, or have a load of spinach or broccoli.
There you go. Good stuff. Okay. There is a recording for this, and we'll drop it into the group later on. Sorry, one last question. So, underactive thyroid, is there any foods that can help?
Oh yeah, I have to get. There is a list of foods that aggravate thyroid. I can't think off the top of my head. I think there might be almonds. Cruciferous vegetables are definitely drive thyroid. So there will be. I might do that. I might pass that on to you, Ronan.
Yeah,
just
pass
off
that
the top
on,
of my head,
and I'll send that to Alison.
Yeah, but certainly you will need to avoid certain foods and then go for other foods that will increase the activity of thyroid. But there's definitely two sets of foods that you need to avoid, and the other you need to introduce, that will really have an impact, really help you.
Perfect. Great stuff. I'll pass that on, and we'll get that recommended books for veggies, and I'll pop that into the WhatsApp group for the 28-day challenge.
Lovely.
Good stuff, guys. Thank you, Tom. Thanks for having me joined us.
No problem. My pleasure. Good to see you all again. Keep up the good work, guys.
Absolutely. And we'll see you all next week. Cheers, team.
Lovely. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Good luck, guys.
Take care. See you, Serge.